Francesca Fiorentini made a video about some of her experiences at TYT, getting the boot from Cenk, and I decided to cover this. And for me, it's not so much about the back and forth drama. It's not really the gossipy thing. I think it's more about how I believe Francesca being banned from TYT is the ushering in of a new era. Because it feels like the modern progressive movement was actually started by TYT. And in fact, their umbrella, like all the voices that came out of that, became the progressive movement that we have now. And each of them seems to have a story like Francesca's about how and why they left. But ultimately, TYT was started by Cenk Uygur, a disillusioned Republican. So I really think this is marking the end of an era of a progressive movement founded by a disillusioned Republican. And it's the start of another progressive movement founded by hundreds of actual progressives. People that actually believe deeply in this stuff, unwaveringly, and they're not going to change their viewpoints up depending on the political climate or where the money's coming from. Believe it or not, despite the onset of fascism, we have a whole crew of new fighters revving up. I actually believe future is bright.
You know when you meet someone and they swear that all of their exes were psychos, and then you slowly realize that, oh wait, I'm talking to the person who was the problem in the relationship? Unrelatedly, the Young Turks. And I'm going to make this as brief as possible because there are a million far more important and pressing things going on right now. As you know, actual fascism. But to make it brief, Cenk Uygur, the head of TYT, recently hath forboten me from appearing on any TYT shows because, in part, I said that him capitulating to right-wing framing on many issues meant he was, quote, acting like a bitch. And the truth is, he was. And I'll explain that a little bit later. But first...
Dude, he was acting like a bitch. And dude, we watched the Dr. Phil thing. That was one of the biggest fucking shithole things I've ever seen. Like, remember that, guys? When we watched the Dr. Phil thing, how everybody in that audience was like a dirty ass right winger. You remember? They were so fucking dirty. They were all a bunch of right wingers, and Cenk was like, oh, he was just had his fucking progressive tail like between his legs. Dude, he was an idiot.
Cenk is known for his passionate commentary, and he's built a platform. YTY. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Dude, YTY. You know what's embarrassing about this? It is the fact that Cenk goes in here and these people, like, they don't give a shit about him at all. The only reason they're including him and bringing him on is he is contributing to their weird pornography that right-wingers are obsessed about now, which is this idea that you were once a left-winger, but the left-wing people are mean and bad, and so now I'm moving over to the right because the right people are nicer. And anybody who is willing to say that, they will bring you in and they will exploit your story, but they're never going to trust you. They're never going to trust Cenk as being a real right-winger. They can't stand him. They have no interest in him whatsoever, except for him to be an actor in that pornographic show of like the left-wingers saying, oh, I was bad. I was stupid. You guys were right. They're all terrible.
He and I have gotten to know each other. I've been on his show. He's been on mine. Sometimes we argue. Sometimes we agree. But we always finish up being friends, which is what I think needs to happen in this country again.
Oh, yeah, that's just it. He's like, Dr. Phil's like, what I really love about Cenk Uygur is I can introduce him wrong, and I can be part of a party that makes trans people illegal in Texas, and I can be part of a party that ships, people without due process to third world prisons. And in exchange, we'll still be buddies. He doesn't mind that I'm like shitting on civil rights and demonizing people and just being a complete fucking shitbag. Like Cenk will still come here and say how the people he's aligned with are bad and we're the good guys. So, man, yeah, I love him. I love Cenk Uygur, right? I love him. Dr. Phil's like, yeah, we could probably resegregate, and Cenk over here would come in and say the N-word a few times on my show. That's how much we love Cenk Uygur. I see Dr. Phil, and I have visions of, like, 7-irons bouncing off skulls. Dude.
Some backstory. So I have been a contractor at TYT for 10 years now, appearing on all of the shows as a fill-in host, as a guest host during election coverage, on the TYT main show, on the Damage Report, and on Indisputable, along with a lot of other shows. I have always hopped on at the last minute, always helped out in a pinch. I guest host last minute, and yes, I was paid. And if you're watching this and you are a TYT contributor and you are not getting paid, stop going on TYT until you do.
Dude, that's insane that TYT would have unpaid workers, especially if they're media personalities, contributors. Like, oh my God. But think about this. For 10 years, she was a contractor to, like, while she's building her career. And sure, she's getting some exposure from TYT too. But she's getting paid to be a contributor, to be a part of this thing. But, like, you would think after 10 years of being a contributor, with you knowing that the audience loves her, she's got this great chemistry with John, et cetera, like, why on earth wasn't she, like, a primary host after 10 fucking years, man? And maybe she didn't want it. But then after 10 years of having a work relationship with somebody who's done you solid for 10 years, you do a 25-minute public diatribe about them because they called you a bitch. That, like, frankly, Cenk, you are a bitch. You know how we know you're a bitch? Because you did that 25-minute diatribe. That was the move of a fucking bitch. I mean, dude, hello? Only a bitch would do something like that. A bitch. A bitch.
I've never been a full-time employee, never got health care, never got maternity leave when I had my child. But
dude, 10 years and she didn't even get health care. I mean, dude, when you have somebody who works for you for 10 years and they're devoted, they do a lot of shit, and they don't have health care, like, what kind of a progressive company are you? You're not a progressive company. You're like a fucking diner. I think even Denny's has fucking health care, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, she could have gotten a job at Starbucks and gotten some fucking health care. Bro, in what world is Starbucks more progressive than a progressive media company? A network, as they like to say, bro. Jesus.
But back in 2018, I was hired for a 6-month contract to pilot a show for $3,000 a month. Then, however, their funding bottomed out and I was let go. And they broke their contract.
Oh, shit. Now, again, this happens, guys. It happens all the time where people back out on contracts. It's kind of an industry standard to allow bigger entities to abuse people like that. It's not right. But every industry has this kind of shit. But the thing about it is she didn't sue, she let it go, and she stayed being a contributor, and still with no reward. Her reward is a 25-minute diatribe of, like, let's try to trash her. Wow. Cenk Uygur, dude, we're going to bury TYT, dude. We're going to bury these motherfuckers.
I told them that TYT was good people, and I wanted to maintain my relationship, and I did. That is until things started to turn for TYT politically. And this started happening around the pandemic. Around the pandemic, 𝗪cie Kasparian seemed to become focused on the issue of homelessness, especially in a city that I used to call home, which is San Francisco. She had an objectively scary experience with an unhoused person, and in fact, I went back to see when she told her audience about this. And I do remember the day that Anna told the story on air. In fact, I was also on after she told that story, but I didn't hear it at the time. It was within an interview that she was doing with an author by the name of Michael Schellenberger, who had written the book San Francisco, why progressives are ruining cities. Instead of focusing on housing market prices, on how homelessness often leads to things like addiction and mental illness, Schellenberger focuses on Democrats who thinks go too easy on the unhoused. I remember that I jumped onto the show right after he got off, after that interview, and the TYT audience was really pissed because they felt like the framing and the platforming of someone like Schellenberger was a disservice to the issue of homelessness, mental illness, and addiction.
Dude, even the name San Francisco, like, bro, that's so fucking demeaning.
Anna apparently took that as the chat downplaying what happened to her rather than how the issues were presented. She's since gone on, right when
Of course, she took it personally.
Shows like Glenn Beck, Piers Morgan, and Jillian Michaels, among others, to retell this story and use it as rationale for why she feels the left left her, that maybe she's never been left, why she's politically homeless, or, sorry, politically unhoused.
Dude, isn't that the irony that she goes there? Dude, that Jillian Michaels woman is fucking annoying, bro.
Since then, she's gone on to cover critical stories from a right-wing framing, like the alleged takeovers of buildings by Venezuelan gangs in Aurora, Colorado, like the mentally ill, undocumented man in Los Angeles, who was found lighting fires, but who was not responsible for the wildfires themselves in January. Throwing progressive mayors like Brandon Johnson of Chicago under the bus because he listens to teachers too much. Anna's actually really skilled at what she does, so the laziness with which she treats these stories really just stands out all the more. Let me give you some backstory, though, of Anna and my friendship.
I will just say this, though. I feel like Anna's not that good anymore, okay? I believe Anna was really good at what she does, and that's how she got to where she is now. But I don't think she's very good anymore. When I see her now, I feel like she's resentful and bitter and predictable and very one note. And she ends up harping on some of the same issues over and over and over again. And like her energy now is somebody that is very much phoning it in while being resentful about her entire business. She really is bitter and angry, so resentful about everything. It feels like the joy is gone.
We've never been close, despite a hike, a dinner, and the time that she generously gave me a gift for my new baby, and then explained to me that she was going to debate Ben Shapiro because, in her words, she, quote, felt she could win over his audience. Two moments with Anna stand out for me in terms of how I've always treated her. In 2016, I was working with 𝗡𝗄+, and we were at the RNC. I had just started going on TYT a little bit and meeting everyone. And TYT was there, and Anna was there, and she was frustrated because she hadn't been booked on many appearances on camera, and instead a panel of men mostly clogged up the day. I stood next to her and told her how annoying that was, and just tried to build her up in solidarity. Then in 2019, we went out to lunch in Los Angeles at an awesome spot that she knew of. And Anna confided to me that she was frustrated about leadership at TYT. How she wasn't involved in day-to-day decision-making, and how Cenk viewed her more as a kid sister rather than a co-equal partner. And at the time, she wanted to branch out on her own and do videos on a new channel. I implored her at that moment to stay. I said that it's always women that tend to walk away from organizations, even when they've helped build them up to the point that they're at. I told her to fight for more of a decision-making role and to not walk away. And she did. And it looks like the editorial decisions that we see being made at TYT are in part because she now has the reins. In a way, I'm proud of her, even if I don't like the coverage. In November of last year, in an effort to understand where Anna was coming from and why she was doing what she was doing, I invited her to come on my show, The 𝗡ituation Room. She agreed, but also told me that she had a family emergency that sounded bad, and I told her to not worry and that we would find a time in the new year. That week, she went on Glenn Beck's show, and it kind of puzzled me, to be honest.
Dude, that Glenn Beck show, I covered that. That one was pretty fucking... It was just a complete, selling off it was like selling off her progressive roots for acceptance and head nods from a degenerate right-wing fuck. Dude, so crazy.
Obviously now is likely not going to come on my show, in part because Cenk did. And I wanted to talk to him about his own very cordial conversations with the right since the election or re-election of Donald Trump, in which he tells various figures from Charlie Kirk to Patrick Bet-David to Tim Pool to RFK Jr. lover, again, Jillian Michaels, about how he agrees that the left is often cruel and too extreme, saying that at a time where people are literally being disappeared for their political beliefs by this right-wing agenda.
Yeah, and there's 500 anti-trans bills. They're passing laws to make transgender people illegal in Texas. They're shipping people to third-party prisons. And you want to talk about how the left is cruel because we call out transphobia, misogyny, and racism? Like, ew! Cenk, you fucking right-wing piece of shit! You're a bitch!
Anyone can watch the discussion. I put it in the link below, and it's honestly just a really disturbing portrait of his very with me or against me mentality. I even foreshadowed in the video the idea that he would boot me from TYT one day. And he did. It was also staggering how much he was shadowboxing with me as some kind of stand-in for the max left that has lost their minds. In that video, he laughed at me for suggesting that Trump would create detention camps. After the discussion in December, TYT main show never asked me back on. And then when I made a harmless little video pointing out that yes, there are detention camps, that seemed to be one of the final straws. Personally, Cenk and I were never close. In 2022, I think we went out to lunch and he asked me if I wanted to work with TYT full-time. And it gave me pause. Look, I work with a number of outlets. I am a stand-up comedian. I value my free time, and I have my own show. I wanted time to do those things, but also I pay through the nose for things like healthcare, and a little bit of job stability would be amazing. I also know how hard the company works people who work there, and I know how it treated the union drive. I also know how much they deny full-time employees bonuses every year, even when they're delivering millions of views. I know that they're kind of cheap, and Cenk usually doesn't like it when people negotiate with him. So I said, sure, I want to work for TYT full-time, but it depends on the offer, which, by the way, you should always ask for an offer before you pledge loyalty to anyone or any company. An offer never came because in my view, loyalty wasn't a given. All this to say, I'm not sad to leave TYT behind, especially now, with, of course, the exception of the damage report with John Iadarola, who I care about and I think is so talented. But
dude, John needs to leave, dude. I know John is like, they made me. I was a viewer. They elevated me to this position. But like, dude, that homie, I was watching him the other day. He was kind of both sidesing it. Oh, I love everybody. But like, bro, it's like, I don't know, man, the real progressives do need to leave because otherwise you're helping to cloud that shit. Because the one thing that I will say is that Cenk and Anna are negative to the progressive movement. They're not helping the progressive movement. They may still have some progressive beliefs, but as a whole, they are a net negative on the progressive movement. They're damaging it by taking certain elements of the progressive movement and trying to demonize it. They're damaging it by talking about their populism and billionaire donors and throwing the Democrats under the bus while simultaneously seeking billionaires to keep their company afloat by union busting. You can't be a progressive and bust unions, take billionaire donors. You know what I'm saying? And right, you just can't. You're not a progressive at that point. And if you look at any of their shows, they will call out Trump for the tax cuts, and they will occasionally softball call out Trump, but still, 75% of all of their content is about shitting on the Democratic Party and being negative towards the Democrats. They are an anti-Democratic Party philosophy. And the thing about it is the progressive movement, even though it runs counter to, yes, what corporate Democrats and those middle of the road liberals want, the important thing to remember is the progressive movement and the Democrats and the middle of the road liberals can all be allies. They absolutely can. The Republicans are a shared common enemy. And we really need to think about coalition building.
We live in a time of right-wing monsters, authoritarians, and yes, fascists. And anyone capitulating to their framework about human rights, about policing, around militarism, is not serious about liberation or democracy. Please, never watch anyone who can't admit when they're wrong. Never watch anyone who tells you that their strategy is right and that they are the way, the truth, the light. Never listen to anyone who doesn't have a sense of humor when they are acting like a bitch.
Yes! I mean, dude, when we're being a bitch, we do have to have a sense of humor about it. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. You like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.